happy to tell you what your path might be. But first and foremost, please get your membership, become a member, and then work towards your designation. Okay, so now I would like to get into the Mastermind 808. This is what we're all here for. So we've got two panelists and I will be your MC. And first I'd like to introduce you to our one and only Arlene Kim Kawamoto. She is our past president. She served for 2 years. Thank you so much, Arlene. And Arlene is the one who's been mentoring me as well. And currently she is our RVP for Region 10, and Region 10 is for California and Hawaii. And she is the owner broker of her own company, Point of Sale Realty. And it was just surprising when I heard that Arlene has been doing real estate for, was it how many years? 20, 30, 30, right? I was like, wait a second, how can you be doing it for 30 when you're like my age? She started super young, so that's amazing. Thank you, Arlene, for your knowledge, expertise, and all that you do for us. Next, we also have Paul. Paul Dismang is the broker owner of Dismang Associates, located in Springfield, Missouri. And Paul as well has been a realtor for 30 plus years. And Paul, you purchased your first investment property at the age of 22. That is amazing. Like, I was like, what was I doing when I was 22? So Paul is a nationwide speaker and has spoken for NAR, RRC, NARPM, to name a few. And you are also a GRI instructor. And I first met Paul 2 years ago when I attended the 2019 NAR conference in San Francisco. He was a panelist speak on investments. And I was like, wow, I took diligent notes and, he planted a seed basically. And then I got to meet Paul again with Arlene last year in Lake Tahoe for CRS celebration in August. And that's when Arlene and I were talking when we were listening to Paul and said, we really want to bring this to Hawaii because we think this will benefit our members. So again, as CRS, we really want to create content that benefits you. So today we have Arlene and Paul, who are both investors that I hope will, pique interest and help you get your investment ideas. So what I will be doing is asking a series of questions to both Arlene and Paul, and they will give you their response. So if you have any questions, please feel free to type it in our Q&A box or the chat, and we'll ask those questions at the end of our presentation. Okay, so Arlene and Paul, how did you get started in investing? We can go with Arlene or Paul, maybe.
Whoever.
Okay.
I'll go.
Oh, thank you, Paul.
Oh, hey, no worries. Hey, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me. Hi, everybody. I absolutely love your state. Big surprise, right? So, so here's the thing. For me, it was a little different because I actually bought my first investment property before I even bought my first primary residence. It was a extremely nervous, scary situation for me. My father actually had really kind of pushed me this way. Now, he wasn't really in the real estate side so much. Matter of fact, he's the guy that always said, hey, I worked in a job for 35 years I hated. And it wasn't until I started buying a few rental properties that I realized how much he enjoyed it. And he was like in his, early 60s and stuff. So he was just having a ball doing it and starting to make money. And he didn't have that money, but he kept pushing me to do it. And hey, this is the best thing you'll ever do. You got to do this. You got to do this. So I did then that I sure wouldn't do now. Now I'm glad I did it, make no mistake. And I encourage to do it young. It's just, I just kind of jumped in, not having the knowledge and even doing the research that I probably should have done at the time. So I did. And I remember it was about 3 days before closing. I mean, I am scared to death. I'm putting everything I've got in saved and borrowing to the hilt to buy this house. And I will never forget, he is so encouraging, he's so happy, and he's just thrilled about this and saying, this is the best thing you'll ever do. Oh, by the way, he said, you could lose everything. I'm like, well, now you're telling me, 3 days prior to closing, now you're telling me I'm going to lose everything and possibly ruin everything. But it didn't work out that way, of course. And one thing led to another. And over the years, we just kept, buying houses. So that's how I got started in it, was from buying. And then, of course, continue to buy property throughout the last 30 plus years.
Thank you for sharing this, Paul. So again, what my key takeaway when I spoke to Paul about this was that he bought his first investment property before his primary residence. You know, people have different tactics, but in Hawaii, I thought that might be interesting because our median price point is so high right now.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, Arlene?
So I did the opposite. And I think most people who do it in that route, I did it right 2 days before I closed 2 days before I hit 19. And I got my license at 18 years old. And I told myself, how can I represent a client if I don't know how it feels? And I remember feeling that I needed to accomplish that goal within my first year of being in real estate. So I bought my first property, 51,000 leasehold, probably the most complicated transaction, but I learned a lot from it. And I bought it as a resident first. And I lived in it for 2 years, and that became my first investment. And so that's how I got started. But I did eventually, I bought it at 51,000 and I bought the lease about a year and a half later at 32,000. And so, yeah, and then I had a fee simple property that became my very first investment and moved on to buy more thereafter. But that was my beginning. And I think a lot of people here in Hawaii start that way. You know, they buy it as their resident first, and then they go on to maybe as their family grows or whatever the situation may be. And then they retain the property and it becomes their first investment. So that's the route I took. And yes, it was nerve-wracking, like Paul just said. It was, and I think the best experience that I could use that would support my real estate career going forward, because I know how it feels. I understand the dynamics of it. And so even taking that step to be an investor and retaining it, that was kind of worrisome for me because now I have 2 mortgages. But at the time, I just focused on my goal and I kept doing it. And eventually, throughout the years, actually, when I had a class in 2003 with Chris Bird, it changed the dynamics of my thinking towards investing. Although I was already doing it, I think in 2003, the light bulb went on. So like Paul mentioned earlier that he went into it, but he wasn't so sure. I did the same thing, but I just did it. Yeah.
That's for sure. And I saw a question here that Lisa asked. Do you mind if I address that? Yeah.
Please, thank you.
So Lisa, thank you for your question. It says, how many rentals do you currently own? Okay, so this is a question, truthfully, I get asked a lot. And I'll just tell you, I typically don't answer it because really I want the focus to be about what we're doing. But I also understand some people want, because I'm a huge believer about always take advice from somebody that you know has a clue about what they're talking about. Because I don't know if you knew this or not, but did you know that there are many, many things out there on the internet that aren't true? Right? Shock. So, but I'll answer your question for this group because I understand we had that. And I'll answer it in this way. I am a property manager and I specialize. I'm a realtor and I've been a broker now almost 35 years. I've been obviously in it a little longer than that. And I specialize in investment properties. That's what I do. So I do list and sell houses constantly, but with a primary focus on investment property for our client. We have a core group of people that are investors. And so we have, obviously hundreds we manage. Me personally, I will just leave it this way and say that I personally own all single family houses. I got, a couple duplexes, I suppose, and I own property in 2 states. So not just here in Springfield, but in another state as well. And I will answer it this way by telling you that I personally own properties. I have, it's in the hundreds. So is what I own. Is that close enough?
Thank you, Paul. Yes. Triple digits, right? Hundreds.
Yeah.
I was like, wow. Yes. Yeah. Real quick, since Chris Bird came up, I just wanted to share my story too. I started real estate in 2014, October. I was in a rental paying like $3,000 a month. And I was like, okay, what do I do? And as a realtor, you need 2 years of commission income to qualify for a loan. And so I took Chris Bird's course in 2015. And I asked Chris, I said, what do I do? Prices in Hawaii are so expensive. Does it make sense for me to buy my first investment property, or should I do, own my primary residence? His advice was to do primary residence, and that's the route that I did take. But what I wanted to highlight is that you can do, there's no correct answer, right? And the timing and the market is all different. So if you feel like, you can't buy your primary residence first because of the price points here in Hawaii, you might look at out-of-state investments too, because that is what my investors are doing as well. And that is the beauty of CRS, is the network that we have, not just, within the state, but, nationally and perhaps globally as well. So that's.
And if I can jump in here real quick, I can't, I'm sitting over, I can't stand it, right? So when you talk about investing in multiple states, I'm telling you that it can be done. It seems harder than what it really is. I think there's a process and a method that works really well in order to do that. I don't think you just, you flow with, the geese, right? You've heard of the standing in line theory or the geese theory, where there's a long line and you go stand in it and you hope that you're in the right line, all to find out you're not, for what you wanted. And so we see people do that often in real estate investing. They flock to a certain market because they heard it's good and they throw money at it, but they're not really doing the true investment and their homework for that. Because look, the bottom line is, for me, it's all about ROI. It's about the return on investment, which is what you're investing in that property. And if you can get a rate of return that is good for you, and I used to tell people what I thought a good rate of return is, and that's out the window because there's too many different scenarios now, but you can get, property. If you're going to have somebody else manage it, then what difference does it make where that property is located? I mean, it can be anywhere here, in the Midwest or East or West Coast. Obviously having a good manager, that's a whole nother story, but having a good manager on the ground to take care of it, you need it. So I just want to encourage that, as I have done, buying in your locality is always good because you can see it and take care of it. But if it's just not practical, not doing it and not saying, well, I don't want to invest then anywhere else because maybe I don't know the market in that area. Well, look, the way our technology is now, you can learn a market, not that difficult to do. I mean, you're a real estate professional, and the way you evaluate property in Hawaii isn't really any different than the way you do it here in Missouri.
Thank you, Paul. Yes. And Arlene, yes, you can probably elaborate as well.
Please.
So I completely agree with Paul. I actually have invested in 5 states other than Hawaii. I originally started in Hawaii, and I realized that there are better states to invest in. And not that I don't love my Hawaii. I do love my Hawaii. I sell our Hawaii. I put people in homes in Hawaii, and I help build dreams in Hawaii. On the other hand, as an investor, it's all about the ROI. And it is also, I stand by, if I wouldn't live in it, I will not own it as an investor. And I've always been, I think that's my own personal thing, is I want to provide a property that I have a minimum standard in. And so, or my standard in, not a minimum, my standard in. With that being said, I have invested in Hays, Kansas, Nevada, in Reno, and both Las Vegas, Arizona, Utah, and one more, Missouri. And so with that being said, it's all about doing your research and also hiring professionals.
Absolutely.
I cannot, I don't manage any of my properties out of the state of Hawaii. I make sure that I have somebody that is very knowledgeable about whatever I need. So if it's buying a property there, I've been lucky. The people I hire have been both my manager and my realtor, whether I'm licensed in that state or not. But knowing your numbers, making sure that you do your research with the help of your professionals that you hire is one of my, it is vital to doing investment out of state.
Thank you so much, Arlene, for sharing that as well. And you rattled off the states that you invest in so people can ask you directly, right? Thank you. Okay. So second question, what was your goal in investing when you started at 22 and 19?
Well, for me, my goal was pretty obvious. I wanted to make money, I mean, duh, right? But the funny thing for me, and I didn't really realize it at the time, but again, I started reading a little bit and getting advice. And so I made the pledge that when I bought the first property, although I wanted to make money, and the eventual goal was to have true passive income. So for me, it was very tight. And by the way, I probably need to throw a little background here if I could. So when I started investing, I don't want you to think, I'd love to tell you that I was handed a lot and I came from a wealthy family and all that. None of that's true. None of it. Matter of fact, when I got married to my wife, Brooke, who we're still married 37 years here later, thanks, man. So, but the interesting thing is one thing we pledged to do, and by the way, our very first rental that we moved into, I was still in college. I had a year left in school and we just didn't have any money. I mean, I literally was working mostly 2 jobs. There was a time I worked 3. Can you believe I was a radio DJ for 3 years? Can you believe that? I know, right? Who would have thought? But what we did is, so we rented this place that was close and it was considered to be a really rough, well, it was and still is, just a not very good area of town. But it's all we could afford. And it was a very, very small place. We paid $160 a month rent is what we paid. And probably the cheapest rent you could find anywhere in our town. And that's where we started. And so here it is, we are saving everything we can save. I'm paying $160 a month. And toward the end of it, we buy a rental property before we buy our own house. We just made a commitment that all the money generated from that rental property would go back into it. So we didn't pull any money out whatsoever of the rentals, as in nothing. So we through our careers, we only lived off our actual income and let that build. And the idea was, as those rentals started making money, we would then leverage the home. And it's a slower start, but we leveraged that to then buy another one and so forth. So it wasn't until we were, at least probably, I can't tell you exactly, but 17, maybe almost 18 years in before we pulled any money out of the rentals at that time. We put everything back in them to allow them to continue to grow. Because, and depending on where you are in life, it matters. When you're 19, 20, 22, 25, you can take more risks. Now, I have an investor now who came to me, and actually I've been working with his son, and they came to me and they said, "Hey, look, Paul, we're outliving our money. We got a real problem." He was 82 years old. She's 81, and they just started investing at that age. And I'm thankful they did. She just had her 90th birthday, by the way. And they took and invested most everything in real estate that they had, because again, they're outliving their money. We were told that if you do this and save, that you'll be fine. Wasn't the case because of inflation and everything else. So here they are, right now at 90, and their net worth is about 2.5 times what it was when they started. Not less and running out of money, but more than, doubled what their net worth, just because they started investing. So you can be older and still do this. Sorry, did I talk too long?
No, that's a great story. I love that. It gives everyone hope, right? Like 82 and 80 and they start investing.
Yeah. And well, and that's right. Because again, they were at a point that they knew. And by the way, nobody knows how long you're going to live. We don't, let's face it. But the fact is, had they not done that, they actually, at this point in their lives, they really would have been out of money about 2.5, 3 years ago.
Wow.
So what do you do? So the fact is we really every one of us are either going to retire or we're going to die. There's no option here. See, so we've got to, and it's kind of a crude reality, but realtors, sometimes we think we wake up and we think the market's good and strong and it's always going to be this way. And I want it to be, and I hope it is, but you need to be investing and planning now for that time.
Paul, can you share that NAR stat that you told us about just as a wake-up call, the 78%?
Yeah, sure. It's pretty scary. So I'll elaborate a little if I may. I don't want to take away Arlene's time here. The interesting thing about realtors is we are great at taking care of clients and our customers, but ultimately we are not very good money managers as a whole. We're just not. I wish we were, but we're not. So statistically speaking, as realtors, approximately 78%, and I can give you the breakdown here, but approximately 78% of realtors have less than $10,000 saved for retirement. Now, we're talking 3/4 of all realtors have less than 10,000. Now, the reason that is even worse than national average. National average, by the way, is around 74%. But here's the big difference. The big difference for realtors, our average age is 54 years old. So we're 54 years old. And on average, again, statistically data nationwide, that the average retirement age for men is 64. The average age for women is 62. And the number one reason by far that everybody retires is because of health. So here we are, 54 years old. We have less than $10,000 in savings. Retirement is 8 to 10 years away for us on average. And we can sit here and look, be real. Now, if we're going to be real with ourselves, we can sit here and say things like I've said, hey, I'm going to work till I die. I'm going to work till I'm 80. Maybe, maybe not. So, because there's some things that are out of our control. And so I know realtors that are friends of mine. I've seen realtors that have made an enormous amount of money. One realtor in particular, I can give you lots of stories. One realtor in particular does a very hefty volume, does an enormous amount of real estate. And I mean, we're talking, gross income is around 900,000 to 975 a year. And yet they spend so much money in marketing and everything else. They are kind of still a statistic. They look good. They have all the depreciable, some assets that are depreciating, but they don't have their own retirement planned out. They're thinking that as long as this volume continues, I'll get to it next year. And it doesn't happen.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that harsh wake-up call. But I think, it is something that we really need to address, as realtors, as a community. Sorry, Arlene, would you like to share?
Yes, sure. To answer your question that you asked earlier, for me, it has changed through my life. When I started investing, it was to get ahead. It was to make some money to supplement my income. And then I would say in 2003, actually maybe a little earlier than that, I started to think about, I would say, my retirement. I started thinking, because as realtors, we don't get, the government or the retirement that many companies, as an employee, you would get. We don't get that as realtors. We have to build that ourselves. And investment property, to me, is one of the surest ways that I know the best in my profession to build investment. Not that I only do investment in real estate, because I do elsewhere as well. But I think that one of the things that I could highly recommend to anybody, but more so for us who are commission earners, is to start planning early. You don't want to get to a point where you're saying I worked a lifetime, and where did it all go? And one of the ways to do that, on top of working our daily lives, is to have investments working for you alongside you without having to have hands-on application. And I encourage everyone to invest, but I more so encourage commission people to start building early, so that when that time comes, or if they want to have the choice to be able to retire, they can. And originally my goal was to have 5 properties and have them paid off by the time I retire. And so that would be that was my original goal. My original goal has expanded since 2003 when I took Chris Bird's class. That is actually when I became a CRS member, by the way. I was hooked on that one class, and I took down notes. I mean, he gave us this fat manual with CDs back then, and that wasn't enough. And I took his class, anytime it was offered that I could take it, in Hawaii especially. And his advantage was how, as in commission people, how we can have more deductions. And so, balancing. So there's more to investing than just the money earned. There is the deductions that we need as commissioners, right? People that earn commissions. It's the idea of investing for our future. So yes, it has evolved as I've gotten older, and more so now I'm looking at leverage. So today I look at leveraging more seriously, because when you do own more assets, you have more income. And so you have to leverage that income. And so that's where I'm at today, is looking at leveraging, making sure that if I keep a property vacant so I can do some renovations, it's okay, because my other real estate is covering. So that's the simple way of looking at it. How I look at things is I don't want to have to pull out of the money that I earn daily. I want that to work for itself. And I hope I answered that question.
I have a question for her.
Sure.
Yeah. Can I? Yeah.
Of
Okay. Why not?
course.
Right.
Let's roll with it.
Arlene, have you ever bought a piece of real estate yet that you regret?
No, I haven't. I have never regretted buying anything in real estate. The reason is because it's probably my field, maybe, that I mean, it's not that I have not had hurdles. I've had hurdles. I've had to, figure out things so that I could move forward and accept what is moving forward. But I have not regretted any of them. And so I'm going to use an example. I own a home in Reno. I own 2 homes in Reno. And in Reno, one of the situations is that when the ice melts off, they have water tables, and the water tables are on the surface. And so when these water tables fill, they do come to the surface. And I had to invest $60,000 into sealing the bottom of my house. And it was a huge job, but I left the house vacant for about 6 months to get this job done. But what the advantage was, just in my Nevada properties, I keep everything separate, my state separate. In my Nevada properties, my other properties paid for that to be done. Because like Paul, I didn't take money. I don't take money out of my properties. I let it work for itself.
There you go.
I think that's what it is. Compounding, right? That's like key right there.
Leverage is,
leveraging.
she said it, Arlene said it, leverage is everything. And you have a certain goal to have, and really for me, it's never been a number of units. It has been more about what that passive income is going to look like. And there's a way that you can leverage houses one over the other as you get started to really increase that cash flow. And, I too wanted to have X number of properties in the beginning, and I wanted to be free and clear to enjoy the cash flow. Since that time, I've learned that really is not a very good strategy. It's better to continue to leverage these homes, have them as she is doing, have them pay others, but you can multiply that thing and let that thing grow, and yet still remove the debt service and or all, I have a number of homes that are free and clear, but we still use some of them to leverage to buy more.
Mm.
Do you mind if I digress slightly? I don't want to get away from people that are wanting to have questions. So do you mind if I look at these real quick?
No,
Is
go
it
ahead.
okay?
No, please, please.
Okay. Yeah. So I own estate investments in Tennessee and Texas. I sold them recently. The main problem we've had is good management. I hear you, by the way. Many of the homes were trashed. Okay. So here's the thing about that. When you have rental property, you can rent to the best tenants. I mean, I had a husband and wife. They were fantastic. They had high credit scores, great income earners. We rented to them. They were perfect. I mean, they're the people you want to have. And they paid their rent on them. They were great tenants, took great care of the home. Till about a year and a half later, he did something he shouldn't have done. And she chased him around the house with a baseball bat and just tore the home to no smithereens. And he had a Corvette in the garage, and there's no way she was going to let that Corvette get out. So she just beat the crap out of the whole door and everything. I mean, thousands of dollars in damage with a baseball bat, right? But they're good people. I mean, stuff like that happens. It can happen. It's kind of part of the business. Now, there are ways that you can protect yourself from with deposits and things like that. And in this case, we were able to get the damages because they were good enough income earners, we could get it. But sometimes that's not the case. And it is, loss is part of the business. It does happen. So the point is, you may have had a bad manager, and I'm sorry that I hate to say it, there's bad managers. There's real estate agents that, quite frankly, aren't very good too, right? I mean, let's face it. You guys probably know a few, but not in Hawaii and here in the mainland. That's where you find most of them. But really, so it is part of it. So I would love to tell you that rental management and buying rentals is all rosy and perfect and pretty. And Arlene and I are kind of saying that it is. And it is, because it's one of the best generation of wealth that you will find. However, it doesn't mean there aren't hurdles. It doesn't mean there aren't issues and problems. And if you're having problems with a property manager, I can assure you there's other managers out there. You fire them just like you would an agent and get somebody else. I believe also part of you and your expertise in being an agent, when you buy property, you should know how to ask the right questions of what do you expect for that fee? If I'm paying you a fee, look, we have no problem collecting a fee from buyers and sellers. We also should have no problem paying a fee to a manager that provides good service. But you want to make sure you know what those expectations are. What do you expect for that fee? And what are you going to get? How often are you going to get monthly reports? What is the limits on repairs and all these kind of things? And you have a checklist and you write things out. And if it doesn't work, and I don't know if Arlene has switched managers before or not, but sometimes you got to. But it doesn't mean the property or an investment is bad. What percent of agents own their home? I used to know that, but I don't know that offhand. I know that homeownership rate is down. It's around 60% nationwide. Hawaii is different. I would assume homeownership maybe not quite as high there. I don't know. Here in Missouri, Midwest, it's less than national average. We're around 50%. That means every other home is a rental in Missouri. You think about that. Even national averages, 4 out of 10 are rentals. So you say, hey, look, I still don't know if I want to get in this investment game. You need to know it and understand it, because you're going to have buyers and clients. A question that I hope we can get to, but I have increased income in sales just by understanding investments, because there are so many people out there that want to buy investments. And one thing we're not going to get to, but 1031 tax deferred exchanges, right? There are clients you have, and someone asked about that here. Can you discuss them? I can. But there are clients out there that you have that have retirement accounts. They have Roth IRAs. They have all different kinds of money in different places, right? There's a thing called a self-directed IRA. 92% of all Americans, 92% have never even heard of a self-directed IRA. What does that mean? You can be sitting there with a client that just bought $1 million piece of property there and away, and chances are they've got money sitting in an investment account in a mutual fund or a Roth or something, and you can tell them, hey, look, you realize you can take that money and buy rental real estate with it through the self-directed IRA, and it works just like a regular IRA does. And there are obviously rules that you got to follow, but there's rules in an IRA. And they can actually own real estate. So you two as agents, if you've got a SEP plan or whatever, we invest in things we don't understand. People have invested in cryptocurrency, and I'm not saying any of this is bad. I'm just saying we invest in things like that. We throw money in the stock market, mutual fund, and you just hope it works. You really don't know if it's working, but you know real estate. And you could take these funds and actually buy rental real estate with it. So in cutting through the questions, 1031 exchanges regards to the investment properties. Okay, so I'm also one of these guys that when the market is high right now, I have investors. I met with one this morning. They start thinking about selling their property. Okay, I have no problem with someone selling their property, but the problem is what are you going to do with it? If you've got the money here in this hand, right? If you got $1 in this hand, think about it this way. If you got $1 in your left hand, I don't know if they're showing left or right on the screen, but it's my left, and you were to take it and move it to your right, it's still your dollar. It's just in a different hand. It hadn't gone anywhere. It's still your money. So when you have it in an investment property, if you sell it and you're going to do a tax deferred exchange, also known as a 1031, then fine. You're taking it. You're going to move it to another piece of property. That's great and fine. Then the tax is deferred. It doesn't mean it goes away. It just means it's deferred, so you don't have to pay tax. However, if you sell this rental property and here you cash out, maybe you make $300,000. Great. Here's your $300,000. Now what are you going to do with it? If you don't have a plan for it, why are you selling the property? It's making you money. And the IRS is going to come along and they're going to take at least 30% of this by the time you pay state and federal tax, maybe more, depending on your tax bracket. You're paying a big dear price to capitalize on the market when, by the way, it's still there. You just haven't pulled it out. You don't need to pull it out. Let it work for you. You know, do I have to be concerned that depreciation may be removed? Well, yeah, I'm concerned about it, but I'm not worried about it. I'm not like stop buying property because if you do calculations correctly and you don't do these real quick little methods, you literally figure what a return on investment is, and you can either add depreciation or not. But I typically don't add the depreciation when I calculate because that's kind of a bonus for me. I don't try and count on that, so I don't worry too much. So the properties that in my case and my investors that I work with, they would make money even if it, did go away. Chris is offering a class, by the way. I saw Chris offering one. He's doing it at your state conference, right? He's doing Chris Bird. They asked, right?
Right, but not the same class that Arlene's talking about.
No, but it's something else, right? He's still coming.
Yes, he is coming.
Yeah, okay. Rental properties usually do not generate returns unless down payments are higher than 50% of cash. Any feedback? Okay, so when you're talking about returns, I got to add this in. And Arlene, I'm sorry, I don't mean to dominate this thing. I tell you, I get kind of ramped up, right? So here's the thing. It's all about rate, the return on investment, your ROI. What is your money doing for you? So is it better to buy a single family home, a duplex, an apartment? It's better to buy whatever is the best rate on investment or return on investment. So if you're not getting a return on investment wherever you're buying the property, it doesn't matter. The numbers don't lie. As long as you key in the numbers correctly, if your rate of return on investment is 0 or negative, why are you buying it? And now, by the way, in all fairness, I got to be fair here. Sometimes, and notice the difference, sometimes I would consider buying a property that was still showing a 0 rate of return or a negative rate of return if I really knew there was a built-in automatic appreciation where it was already there, or if you think the market is going to continue to accelerate, then that would be a possibility. But watch the difference. If you're doing that, you're not investing. Sorry, you're not. You're speculating. There's nothing wrong with speculation. Just understand what you're doing, because speculation's like gambling. You're going to the roulette wheel. I understand you guys like Vegas. Isn't that like what, your eighth island, I'm told, or something? You go to the ninth. Oh yeah, sorry. Okay. So you go to the roulette wheel, right? And you're hoping red will come up. You're gambling. You know the odds. Well, speculation of real estate's the same thing. Is often I see real estate, quote, investors not invest. They walk in a home, they like it. Oh, I could live here. This smells good, looks good. It's got to be a good rental. Let's buy it. And they don't run the numbers. And that, my friends, is speculation. As long as you know what you're doing. Look, when you walk to the roulette wheel, you know you're gambling. You may try and have a system and think you got to figure it out, but you know you're gambling. That's what I'm saying about real estate investing. Know how to figure it. And then all of a sudden, had I done that when I first started, now it worked out for me, and the market and everything else helped, of course. But had I done that properly, then I would have actually leveraged differently had I known the numbers then as I do now. And I bet I see Arlene shaking her head, go, yep, I would have done it. Yep, a little bit differently had I known how to figure it then. So it's out there, right? It's out there. Arlene, your turn. You take a question. I'm talking too much.
I wanted to go back and answer Marla's question. That was early on.
Yes.
Marla, so with that question you had was how, as a commission earning party, start investing. You know, it is a planning. You have to plan it. I would say get with your CPA, and when you're preparing your taxes for that year that you decide that you want to purchase, have them structure it where you show sufficient income, you show any schedules that you may have, and make sure that it's clear, and then pursue. Another thing I would mention is that, you know, off of Paul, what he just mentioned, is know what you need and then know what you want. If you know what you need when investing, that's what you're going to look for. Like Paul mentioned, and I mentioned a little earlier, it's not always about the profit, the money profit. Sometimes you need more deductions. This past year, I decided that I needed more deductions, but I did not want to enter a competition. So I decided that I was going to buy a property that came from a development. There's no competition. I don't want to outbid. I don't want to be bidding for a property. And so I knew that I didn't want that. And I also knew that I needed something to leverage my taxes. So in investment, it's good to know what you need and to have a strategic plan. And going back to what Marla had asked, it's a planning. You have to plan with your CPA, know what you are going to be doing and need. So if it's the simple term income, right? If you want an income off of your property, then that's the property you're going to look for. Something that has a rate of return financially, money-wise, per month, per year, whatever you see. Some people just invest for the purpose of turnover. So that's another thing. I tend to buy and keep and let it earn until it's paid off. That's my theory, right? Until I have a property that's going to give me a retirement at this stage in my life. But when you know what you need and know what you want, that's how you're going to pursue your investing. I hope I answered the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Arlene. Thank you, Paul. We are now 1 minute until 10. We have it's been great. Can we just show that one slide, Crystal, that Arlene had prepared? And I just want to wrap it up with the reason why I invest is to build community as well, right? To give back to the community, Arlene, like you were saying. As realtors, we want to provide safe homes for people to live in. And that's what I think we can do. So thank you, Crystal. And we can share the PowerPoint deck with everyone who is here. But if you can just slide over to, I think it's 2 slides after this, Crystal. Yeah, I'll just go over The one that had, yes, this one. Arlene, do
There
you
you
want to
go.
talk about this? You're muted.
I wanted to show this because there is so much to in return for real estate. It's not only the monthly cash flow, like we know, the passive income, but it is also right now, I think one of the serious things is it's a hedge against inflation. And we are in inflation right now. I mean, we are in that situation. And the good thing about real estate is it grows with inflation, right? So but one of the things that Aquino was mentioning is service to community. We're providing homes. We're providing services to our community. And whether you're in your state or outside your state, you know, some of that income is feeding back into the community as well, into the educational system, into the economics in the general. But servicing your community is one of the things that sometimes people miss, but I feel that when I am doing investment, I am providing a service to the location and into the state, as well as it's supporting me and my family as well.
Thank you, Arlene. Yes. Thank you, Paul. I just want to be mindful of everyone's time. I feel like we are cutting it short. But if you have any other questions, I guess we might try to do this was the first session, maybe we can do a second session, you know, with all the questions that have come up. So again, thank you everyone for attending this, and Paul and Arlene, thank you so much for your expertise. Please reach out to us with more questions or any feedback that you have. And thank you again for your time. Aloha.
Aloha.
Bye,
Thank you
everybody.
to our sponsors too.
By the way, can I say that I'm
Oh,
mad
sure.
that I had to pay $3.39 for gas today before I got here?
$3.39.
I know, right? Crazy. What has happened with our country?
Do you know how much gas is here? Like $3.39 is like a steal, Paul.
Oh, so I shouldn't complain, right?
Nada. Nope. No, but thank you again, everyone. We had more questions lined up, but I really loved your expertise. We can go on and on, you know, so thank you again.
Well, we can do it again if you want. So
yes, we'll discuss.
All right.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Paul. Thank you,
Bye,
Arlene.
guys.
Thank you, Crystal.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.